Hello, I'm Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County. Welcome to another edition of Future First, Focus on Broward's Children. We all want children to grow up in safe, loving environments. For many years, government and nonprofit organizations have played a role in protecting children by first connecting families with resources that will allow them to keep children safely at home. When that's not possible, the children enter the child welfare system. Joining me today to discuss the child welfare system are two individuals responsible for ensuring the long-term safety and well-being of children are the top priority, guiding decisions made on their behalf. I have with me today Kim Gorsuch, Director of Child Protective Investigations Section with the Broward Sheriff's Office and a former member of the Children's Services Council, and Larry Rein, the Interim President CEO of ChildNet, where he has been serving since its inception in 2002. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Protecting our children is on a lot of our minds these days. We were just saying it, different, not different. We're in the business of keeping our children safe, whether it be in their homes or wherever they may go in the community. Larry, your job at ChildNet involves child welfare. Can you explain what that means and what ChildNet is?
ChildNet is the lead agency for community-based care in Broward County. What that really means is we are responsible for operating the foster care system in Broward County and have been since 2002. We get children after there's been an investigation by BSO that requires them to come under the supervision of ChildNet and the 17th Circuit Judicial Court. So we then work with them, work with their parents, try to get their homes to a place and their families to a place where they can be safely returned. But if not, then we look for wonderful, loving, adoptive parents for them.
I guess why I was thinking about it being different is because for the most part, we talk about the child welfare system looking at the parents and whether the parents are capable of creating a safe home for their children, as opposed to the children, the children's behavior. But Kim, that gets to sort of the side of what you do. What is Child Protective Investigative Services?
Well, it's a little bit of both. The Broward Sheriff's Office since 1999 has investigated cases of abuse, neglect, or abandonment of children under the age of 18. And that can encompass both parents who are struggling to adequately care for their children, who may be, in fact, mistreating them in some fashion. But we also look at the impact that has had on children, because if indeed that there is some abuse or neglect or substance misuse, which we're seeing a tremendous amount of these days, or domestic violence between the adults in the home, that has a significant impact on the children, on their brain development, on a number of factors that can impact them for the rest of their lives, the trauma that they may have undergone. So we look at both the capacity of the parents or caregivers to adequately and safely being the key word, care for those children. And also, if something has occurred, we look at the impact on the child and try and get the best possible services wrapped around that family to ameliorate the situation. Or if it cannot be ameliorated and the children cannot remain safely at home, then we do remove the children, and in a very high percentage of the cases, we place them with relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, or family friends. But if no one is available from the family, the extended family, then we do transfer the case over, and ChildNet then does make a placement into foster care if need be. So we try and look at the entire circumstances from the perspective of the parents and of the children.
And about how many calls come into the hotline each year? How many are you investigating?
We do about between 1,000 and 1,200 investigations every month. So it is a large number. We determine children either safe or unsafe as a result of our findings from our investigation. And we have a very high number that we determine that are safe and can remain in their home. Their families may need some services, such as those funded by the Children's Services Council, or they may need child care services or some other community resource. And then it's the unsafe children, which is usually a couple of hundred every month, that need more intensive services, more attention by us to determine what's really going on in that family, and then making that very critical decision of can they remain safely at home with services, or do they need to be removed?
One of the things that drove us to do this program today was the need for child protective investigators. And so can you talk a little bit about the role that the CPIS investigator plays and why it's so important?
You know, it's often been said that a child abuse investigator or a child protective investigator is the last best hope for children, the last best hope. And I believe that that is true. We get calls and we don't know exactly what the circumstances are when we go out. We have a group of individuals that work in our office that can pull together information from a lot of databases. We pull birth records, driver's records, criminal histories, court records, so that we kind of know what we're walking into in a home. But we don't know everything that may or may not has occurred. And so it's important that investigators look at situations in totality. And so we're looking for people who have a passion for families, healthy families, a passion for children, who are naturally inquisitive, because again, it is a fact-finding process to determine if a child has been mistreated. So we want somebody who doesn't just take every answer at face value, but who wants to dig a little bit deeper, to verify, to corroborate information, and who also is not afraid of hard work. There's no doubt about it that this is tough work. On the other hand, it's very rewarding work. I've been doing this kind of work for many, many years. And this is my third state that I have worked in. And it is incredibly rewarding work, but it can also be difficult from time to time. And the hours need to be flexible. Our folks have to be able to respond because, you know, these kind of situations don't happen necessarily Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. So my staff have to respond evenings. They work into the evening. I have a late shift. And they work on call sometimes on weekends. And on occasion, they have to crawl out of their warm, cozy bed in the middle of the night and respond to make sure that children are safe. We are accompanied by law enforcement when we go. We don't send folks out by themselves. And we provide a lot of support to our personnel so that they're not making these life-changing decisions by themselves, but we wrap a lot of support around our staff, such as mental health and domestic violence professionals, to help them make those critical decisions of whether or not children can remain safely in their home. So it takes a person with a good work ethic, some tenacity, some natural curiosity, and not afraid to work hard to keep children safe. And I have to say, I have a tremendous staff. They are dedicated. Many of them have been there more than 10 years. They are very dedicated to the children and families in this community.
And you know, there's a lot of press when something goes wrong, and people tend to focus and lay blame. But so often what your people do, I mean, many more times, they are saving lives, and they are doing wonderful, wonderful work that is changing the course of a child's life for the better.
I say to them that they save lives every day. Those stories don't get told for a variety of reasons. Families have the right to confidentiality, and so those don't make it to the press like a case where something tragic or unfortunate happens. but day in and day out, they're out there working with families, making decisions, keeping children safe, putting services in for their families, making sure that we make sure that families these days get to the drug treatment that they need to. Parents who are abusing drugs, it has a severe impact on their ability to adequately raise and supervise and nurture their children. And so we try and keep our heads down. We don't get too distracted by what the press may or may not write about a story or a case that ended tragically, because we've got to focus on the case in front of us. And it is sad and it's unfortunate that those good stories don't get told, but we're not distracted by the fact that they're not, because our work is too important for that kind of distraction.
Larry, I want to bring you into this too, because you wind up when involved when the child must be removed from their caretaker, usually the mother and father, and your role is also vitally important, and you need more people in your organization as well. Always.
We currently have about 200 case managers in Broward County. We call them child advocates, and they're responsible for managing the case of this child and their family. It brings them in contact with behavioral health care providers. It brings them in contact with the school system, often with the Department of Juvenile Justice, with attorneys, with judges. They have to sort of bring it all together. But you made a really great point. These people that do this work every day, are there tragedies that happen once in a while, thank goodness not very often, but the rest of the time they are literally saving lives, and they're saving families. And I've made a real big effort, especially in the last couple of months here in Broward, of trying to impress upon our staff just how important and valued they are. We got an award just last Friday from the Children's Services Council for collective impact on children and families, ChildNet did, and I immediately went back to our offices with the trophy, and I'm going to go around, I did Friday already, and said this shows how valued you are, how much people rely on you to do the job that you do, and they beamed. And I think that's the thing we need to do more of. We need to be playing up how 99.9% of what they do is incredible.
So true. And talk about, you do need, are some challenges in recruitment, perhaps because of the bad stories, perhaps because people just don't think about this as a line of work. So why do you need more people? And what do you, Kim, you talked a little bit about the characteristics that you're looking for. What would they do if they wanted to come work for the sheriff or for ChildNet?
Well, for us, they can go to www.sheriff.org. That is the Broward Sheriff's Office website. And our ad is posted there, and they can put in an application. We also recently just started doing orientations for folks who may want to get more information about being a child protective investigator. They may have some questions about what it is or what it isn't.
Is there an educational requirement? Is there a background that you're looking for?
There is. There is a bachelor's degree with some related experience, bachelor's degree preferably in social sciences, psychology, social work, sociology, criminal justice, those kind of degrees, with some experience, and that can include an internship or volunteer work. And we will look at their application and see if we can't get them in the process and get them hired. We are always looking for good people. It's a frontline job, and like any frontline job in social services, there is some turnover. People start their career doing these kind of jobs and get a few years experience under their belt, and that they go on to become supervisors or managers or take their career in a different direction, or sometimes they relocate. And so we always do have some turnover. But like I said, I have a lot of folks who have been there for many, many years who are very dedicated to this work. And so I think that says a lot for the stability that we have in child protective investigations at Broward Sheriff's Office. But yeah, it's a fairly easy process to apply, going to the website. And then it is a little bit longer once someone has been selected for interview, because we do a polygraph and a psychological evaluation and a background investigation, because we want to be sure that we have the very best people doing this kind of work for the obvious reasons. It's sensitive, and it takes the right people, and we want to make sure that we have people with flawless backgrounds.
And Larry, what about for the child advocates?
Not dissimilar. You can go to our website, childnet.us, and always apply. 5 times a year, we hold a training class for 10 to 20 new case managers or child advocates. We are always holding those because we always want to refresh the workforce. And it's interesting, another point that's probably not dissimilar between protective investigators and our case managers, the ones that we have that succeed stay forever. What we found is when there's turnover, which there is, it's always really sort of in that first year or so for those that are adjusting to the job, and it is a challenging job. So what we've tried to do is provide a lot more support for people when they're starting. So after they get out of training, they get really sort of a development counselor to always be available for them to support them through those first few months of their job. They gradually take on a caseload until they get more and more experience, then they get certification, and then they can take a full caseload. But we're trying to support them at the front end so that they can then become those vets that we have. It's very, very interesting. And if they can get past that, one of the reasons it's interesting, we take a wide variety of new employees. So as much as it's people coming out of schools of social work, and our requirements are pretty much the same, some sort of social work or social services education or human services education. But we also like people with experience, and maybe somebody that's looking to make a change in what they're doing, and maybe somebody that's a little bit older and a little bit more experienced in life, and so that they will be able to adjust, and will have had those experiences in life and maybe in raising their own family that would make them more capable at the beginning. So we look and we accept applications certainly from everybody. We do an intensive training. We do the same sort of background screening to be sure that they have nothing in their past that would preclude their serving children and families. But we'll take a broad variety of people, and then we'll support them as much as we possibly can in what initially is a tough job.
Yeah, and I should add that our training is the same. We back many years ago when I started in this work, I went to work and I think I got cases the next day. We put people through extensive training, 10 weeks in a classroom where they learn the laws that are applicable, the policies, practical examples, case scenarios. So it's 10 weeks of classroom training, and then when they go out into the field, they go with an experienced child protective investigator, one of our more senior individuals, and they stay with them for a month, and they get very few cases during that time, and then we gradually then will increase their cases and transfer them to their regular supervisory unit. But it's an in-depth training because we want to make sure that they're prepared. So we don't just hire them and send them out in the field by themselves. We give them extensive training to make sure that they're prepared to do this work.
And when they go out in the field, what's a day like? What kinds of things are they doing?
So we start in the morning, and we receive cases that came in from the overnight. As long as they were not emergencies, we can hold them over and start the next morning. So they have laptops, they have a take-home vehicle, they have uniforms, they have portable printers, they have cell phones. They can start their day, leave their house, stop on the way in. They often make visits at school early in the morning, or they'll make a home visit at someone's home to catch them before they leave for work for the day. make sure that they're getting children to medical appointments if there needs to be a medical exam for some reason. They may go to court. We have emergency shelter hearings every day around 1 o'clock, so they may go to court. And then they may come in the office later in the afternoon and they'll work on some case notes, or they may pick up another case that came in during the day. So they are in the field most of the day. My folks do not sit in the office. In fact, if you came to my office today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you wouldn't see that many people there because they are in the field most of the time. And they can work remotely. If they need to pull over and do some work while they're sitting in a parking lot, waiting for law enforcement to respond, or they're waiting for court to start, they can literally do some of their documentation and their paperwork from anywhere. But they are, we feel like we provide them with good equipment to make sure that they do the job, and they don't have to worry about their car breaking down, or having the right cell phone, or being able to print when they're out in the field and they need to have a form signed. So we think having that equipment, as well as providing a lot of support to them individually, makes all the difference.
Larry, how about your child advocates? What are they doing during the day?
Everything. I mean, if one thing it is not is a dull job. It is multifaceted, so varied. So they could typically in a day spend time in court, reporting to the judge. They serve as a witness and they give updates to the court on a child's progress and the family's progress. They could go to the child's school to advocate on the child for whatever educational services they need. They can supervise a visitation with the child and the parents from whom they have been temporarily removed. They are extremely mobile. They also, it's interesting, we also rely a lot on technology. We've made it so they can do everything they need to do, essentially, in terms of paperwork on their mobile phone. They can take pictures they need to do. They can take the notes they need and upload them to the state's information system. They are constantly doing something and doing something different. Again, they work with the child to be sure the child is safe. They visit the child if he's in a foster home or a group home. And then they work with the parents. They have to engage those parents. And again, as we talked a little bit earlier, predominantly in South Florida, and this is our experience, my experience of certainly the last 10 years, if not 15, we see child abuse, or the child welfare system is largely about adult substance abuse, adult domestic violence, and adult mental health. And those things impairing the ability of parents to care adequately or appropriately for their children. So we have our caseworkers, our child advocates, need to be sure that they engage with those parents and get those parents not only to the services they need, but really taking advantage of those services and getting engaged in those services and supporting that family to do everything they can to get their children back and a family be safe and reunified. So it is a really exciting job. It's a lot, but for the people that it's right for, it's an amazing thing. And like we say, if you're the right person, we keep you forever.
And our staff work very close together, and we're fortunate that our offices are right around the corner from each other. So we've got ChildNet employees actually co-located that are in our office full-time, and then we've got child advocates who are in and out, and our investigators are in and out of their office all day long and having meetings and discussing families and transferring cases. They meet when they transfer cases, so there's a face-to-face meeting. So our agencies are like sister agencies in many respects, and before the child welfare system was privatized, it was one entity, the Department of Children and Families. So we work very, very closely together, and when one of us is feeling overwhelmed, the other one is feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But our folks do work very, very well together, and many of our folks are close colleagues with ChildNet employees and vice versa.
And we also have a very nice model in Broward that Kim and BSO have really pioneered, and ChildNet is doing more and more of bringing those service providers, those behavioral health care providers, the substance abuse treatment provider, the domestic violence service provider, the mental health counselor, into our buildings and letting them locate there, so her staff and our staff don't have to go to somebody's office for advice or to link their families. They can just walk down the hallway, and that's worked out tremendously well, and I think is a really, really good support for both our staffs.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that keeps running through my head from my conversations with different foster children and families is the impact that your staff have on them. The way in which a child, if they have to be removed, gets removed, how that sticks with them. And so the sensitivity that your people show to that child when that happens is so vital. You really need a person with a heart in that role. And also, you know, from the child advocate's perspective, sometimes that child advocate is the only stability in that child's life. When that parent is struggling with mental health and substance abuse or domestic violence, they may have gone back and forth in and out of the home. They may have gone from foster family to foster family. And that child advocate is so important to make them, that child, feel secure, to know that there is a caring adult that's going to be there for them.
Yeah, and one of the most incontrovertible facts of child welfare is the more stable, if a child has that single case manager, the much more likely they are to benefit, the much more likely they are to get to permanence either with their parents or with an adoptive parent quickly, timely, and safely. So that case manager and having that one case manager and keeping that one case manager is absolutely, absolutely essential to the progress of the child and the family.
So once again, this half hour has gone by really fast. I want to thank you both so much for all that you do for Broward's children. We need you and the people who work for you in this community now more than ever. Clearly working to protect children, investigate allegations of abuse and neglect, digging past the surface to ensure that every child has the opportunity to grow in a healthy, safe environment is more about passion and often sacrifice than potential remuneration. We didn't really talk too much about the salary, but it's not about the money. There's really not that much material gain, but there's a lot of personal satisfaction that can come from this work. There are so many pieces to this puzzle, and all are integral to the needs of the child. I want to thank Kim Gorsuch and Larry Rein for helping us navigate through a complex system and perhaps motivate some of you to come out and become part of the system. I've been your host, Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer. For a copy of this or any other episode of Future First, Focus on Broward's Children, go to our website, www.cscbroward.org, where you can access our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and remember to join us next time on Future First, Focus on Broward's Children.